Good afternoon, everyone, and what an honor and privilege it is for me today to welcome such an accomplished professional to our Learning from Leaders series. Direct from New York, we are joined by Denise, Chief People Officer at Tapestry, parent company of the amazing fashion brands Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, and Coach, brands that we all love. So without further ado, let me welcome Peter Vanham, our great interviewer, to the floor so that the session can begin. So Peter, the floor is yours. Over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and it's indeed a real pleasure. Those of you who have joined us in the past couple of months and years know that we have a particular interest in leaders from the fashion industry, and we're very pleased that Denise is joining us today. Denise, I'm going to ask you some serious questions in just a little bit, but before I do that, I should ask you, this is a special day for you, for everybody in the US, because you just had Thanksgiving, didn't you?
We did. We had a long weekend of eating and shopping here in the US. It was a fantastic weekend.
Oh, that's great. And where was the balance for you? More on the eating side or more on the shopping side?
Um, I have to say that I probably did more shopping. I've been trying to focus on my health and well-being, and I did a lot of exercise to balance out the eating. I definitely did my fair share of shopping, and since today is Cyber Monday, the shopping will continue, actually.
That's great. And does that include shopping at your own store at
It's
tapestry.com?
very well, that's an ongoing process.
Well, I hope that the company at least gives you some good discounts for employees. But I guess we'll find that out. Denise, thank you so much. I'm very honored, of course, or we're very honored to have you. A lot of our students are interested in the fashion industry. Live in cities, of course, that are in tune with what's happening in the fashion world, and maybe both buyers of your products and maybe also ever interested in joining your company if that's ever possible. We'll talk about all of that. But I know that as a way of introduction for the very few people that are with us that do not know Tapestry, you suggest we show a quick video. I know there may be a bit of an issue with the audio on the video, but could I perhaps ask that we watch that video first, and then I'll ask you all about Tapestry. Denise, a couple of names there that if we don't know the name of the company, Tapestry rather, that we will certainly all know as consumers. Coach Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman. Tell us a little bit more about these brands and overall the company. What should we think of? Where do you fit into the fashion industry, both in terms of your positioning and perhaps some numbers that sort of give an indication of the size and relevance of those brands?
Excellent. I will, but first I wanna thank you for inviting me today. It really is an honor. I know that you've had some incredible leaders come to these sessions, so thank you very, very much. I'm really I've been looking forward to this, and I'm delighted to be here today. And I'm delighted to work at a company like Tapestry. So I've been with the company for just over a year, actually. And Tapestry is a brand-led, people-centered company with approximately $6.5 billion in sales. And as Peter said, we have three brands: Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman. We have a total of about 18,000 employees, and we're in approximately 70 countries, and about 22 of those are wholly owned businesses. So our company is quite broad, quite expansive, and we're headquartered in New York City.
That's amazing. I have to say, to give people an idea of that size, when you talk about $6 billion, I work also at Fortune. That would just about qualify you as a Fortune 500 company almost. That's really a huge company.
It is, and we will get to the Fortune 500 guaranteed. We are incredibly focused on growth. That is one of the reasons why I am at the company, because it is a very growth focused organization, and the fact of the matter is that from a growth perspective, while we're 6.5 billion, while we're in 22 wholly owned countries and 70 other countries that we sell product through a wholesale channel, we have an incredible opportunity to continue to grow the organization. So we will be on that list, Peter. I promise.
I don't think you're far off, but it's quite amazing because we have indeed had over the years some representatives of fashion companies, and while they're all iconic, few actually have that size. This is really a big. So where do you attribute that to? Is that because you're sort of some of your brands are perhaps more in the affordable luxury category, or how would you categorize the brands and sort of their positioning in the market?
Look, we're trying to democratize fashion. And we want to make it accessible to anyone who wants to participate. So all of our brands, when you think about the Coach brand, which is our biggest brand, our Coach brand is incredibly inclusive and accessible to a wide variety of our customers. And then, our Kate Spade brand is very similar. Our Stuart Weitzman brand is much smaller, but also packs a powerful punch in terms of the product and the following, our consumer following at Stuart Weitzman.
So, tell us about what that actually means, because I think most of us probably fit in the category where we probably could afford and may, in fact, probably most of the people in this room, since the majority here are women, I suppose would probably have one of the products, one of the bags, one of the other accessories of either Kate Spade or Coach. Is that also what that bears out if you look at your research in terms of who your customer is? Is this really sort of like pretty much the potential customer is the majority of professionals living in urban areas having an interest in fashion?
So the amazing thing about our brands is that they really are quite democratic. So when you think about, and I'll talk about the Coach brand and the Kate Spade brand, but the Coach brand in particular, it resonates across the globe. And there's an element here, which is we have an incredibly diverse customer base. And therefore, we design and plan experiences in our stores and online for a diverse customer base. So it is not a narrowly defined customer base. It really is quite a broad, diverse group of customers who are drawn to our products, and in part because, yeah, they are more accessible. It is a very democratic brand, but we are a very inclusive brand. So people who come into our stores or who engage with us online feel very welcome. They feel connected. They see people that look like them and sound like them. So we really have had a lot of success over the last several years in driving that connection with our consumer from a Coach perspective. And Kate Spade, we are really focused on accelerating our ability to connect with our consumers in a very different way. And I'll just say one other thing about that. Um, our company is brand led. So everything that we do in the company, whether you work within a brand or within a supporting function in the center, everything that we do is focused on the customer. So we make decisions based on what the customer wants, what the customer is using, what resonates with the customer. And that is part of our secret sauce, that we are so incredibly customer focused, which frankly is a bit different in some cases than other fashion brands. Um, Sometimes other fashion brands may tell customers what they want. We listen to customers.
That I think that may resonate with a lot of people, especially as you contrast it with that other approach, where basically you sort of see certain brands basically talk. You could not talk down to a consumer, but essentially telling them what it is that fashion is, or what it should mean in their lives.
That's exactly right. And oftentimes it may feel exclusive. What we are very focused on is being inclusive.
Mm. Now, if you break that down, I wanted to ask you about the trends in the fashion industry that you're following, but it sounds more like what you're saying is in general we don't follow fashion trends, we follow trends of the consumer. So tell us, what are the trends among consumers nowadays that you were following?
Yeah. Well, let me just clarify something. Certainly, our designers and our merchants and our product development teams are are very clear about what the trends are, and certainly that does get incorporated. But my point here is that there are some things that we do inside our company that are very different, and I'll give you some examples um, of things that we do to design, develop, and distribute product that is different, I think, than many companies. Number one, and this is certainly a trend out in the world, right? The fashion trend, sustainable fashion. So one of our top priorities, both from a fashion perspective and from a corporate social responsibility perspective, certainly is sustainability, and we believe in protecting our planet. So one of our top priorities is around how do we create products that don't bring more waste to the planet. So we have products that are made from leftover raw materials, for example. Some of you may be familiar with our Coachtopia line. And these products can be reused, they can be recycled, they can be taken back. Um, we also have something called a Reloved program. And Reloved is really, it's a circular concept where we will take back product, we'll refurbish it, we'll upcraft it, we'll remake it, and then we'll resell it so that again, it goes on to see another life. And go in going specifically, Peter, to your question about like what are the trends, one of the ways that we gain clarity on what our customers want. So yes, there's an overall trend, of course, but we actually are very focused on customer data. And this is very different than other fashion companies, most other fashion companies. I don't want to, don't want to generalize, but we are very focused on data, specifically customer data. And we have very sophisticated, advanced data analytics that help us make decisions about what our customer want, what will resonate with our customer, what products should we be creating, what should our marketing be, what should it look like, how should it resonate, pricing. So our data analytics function really is, we believe, a competitive advantage in our organization and with our consumers.
Yeah, I have to say, I've only been in touch with the stores, of course, adjacently, literally, and as I joined my wife on trips to your stores. But even for me, that was obvious in the sense that she would find products like, for example, things that matter to her as a professional in her professional life, or she would find products that are up to date with the latest technology developments, like for the latest iPhone, or with the latest accessory developments in terms of like how women wear, for example, things like cards, etc. And so that I think was quite obvious, even from a product design point of view, that you really are in tune with what people need and want.
Yes. And this was a capability that was built over a number of years. As you can imagine, it's a very different way of operating in the fashion industry, which often fashion houses are led by creative directors. We have a creative director of Coach, of course, but
Sure.
it's very much, or often it's that one person's view of what the consumer wants. And so this capability that we built, there's a technology element, there is a technical skill element, and a capability and a team that was built over a number of years, but it was very purposeful. It was very purposeful in why we did this, and it really is paying off.
Yeah. That brings you to the next question, which I was going to ask you about. When we talk to other executives in the fashion industry, they always talk to us how important the talent was that they uphold. I took that to mean that it was important that they attracted, for example, the right creative talent.
Yes.
But I guess from your point of view, it sounds like that also integrates, the right people that know about their customers, about a product, about technology, about design, as well as the creatives. Is that right?
That is 100% right. Look, creative talent is critical in a fashion company. There is no question about that. But the way that we think about our business and our customers, great talent is key and critical in a variety of areas. Yes, creative and design, merchandising, product development. But as I said, technology for us is a core path to connecting with our customers. So whether it's data, IT, digital, we really have built our digital capability over the last number of years. And again, it's really served us incredibly well. The other element that we think a lot about is our supply chain. So what's amazing about our organization, if you think about our end-to-end supply chain, from design to product development all the way through manufacturing and fulfillment, but particularly at Coach, but really with all of our brands, we talk about craftsmanship at scale. And so we need to have, all of our products, if you can imagine this, are handmade.
Yeah,
Every factory-
that's crazy to imagine, actually.
it's kind of hard to imagine. And I was recently in Vietnam at one of our factories, and it is actually mind-blowing to see the level of detail that goes into a handbag or a shoe being made. But the fact of the matter is, as we think about talent, we've got to have talent that understands the end-to-end supply chain and all of the things that enable that end-to-end process. So even if someone is sitting in a finance role or an HR role, every one of those individuals has to understand the end customer and how their decisions from their seat impact the customer and the brand. And that's something that we really focus on. And as we think about bringing new talent into the organization, we do test for that and really evaluate that individual's understanding of what does it mean to be a brand or to be in a brand-led company? What does it mean to be thinking about how my decision impacts the consumer? It's a very integrated organization. And with that, you've got to have individuals who are really interested in the whole business, not just their specific silo.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as you mentioned that, one of the other numbers that stood out to me is that, you have 80,000 employees. That's a huge 8,000. 18,000. 18,000 is a very high, it's a high number because if you got to have consistency, both in their understanding of the customer, but also, I suppose, which is important to the company as well, what values you have as a company, the corporate culture, and you're such a multinational. You talked about the dozens of countries that you're in, where there's differences across all kinds of lines. Uh, is it possible to have that sort of one mindset, one culture at the company? And if so, how do you do that? And that, by the way, is my question to you, right? Because to be clear, of course, you're representing the entire company as an executive, but you are of course, a chief people officer, I suppose, is what it's called in the organization, but that basically is responsible for all that talent at the company.
Yes, that's what they tell me. I'm responsible for all that talent at the company. Uh, you know what, Peter? It is possible to have a consistent culture throughout our enterprise. And there's a couple of things that I think about when I think about culture. Culture is really, when you get down to it, it's the behaviors, it's the language, it's the intentions that happen every single day with every single interaction. And so we actually have a framework and a foundation of what our culture is all about. And our company purpose is stretch what's possible. So if you imagine a tapestry can stretch, right? If you take out a tapestry, you can move it in different ways. And it's all about how can you stretch what's possible. The example I gave earlier of how do we use data insights to create something really unique and create a competitive advantage? That was an example of stretch what's possible. So we focus on stretch what's possible and then a series of values that support that company purpose. That is our foundation. That's the stake that we've put in the ground. And we are really focused on ensuring that every employee in the company understands that and understands what are the behaviors we expect to enable that purpose and to live our values. And we think about our organization in a way where we want to create opportunity for our employees. We want it to be a creative organization. We want our employees to be their authentic selves, and be able to be accountable for the work that they're doing. And so we've got this foundation, but we also recognize, because we're very focused on being inclusive and welcoming, that local norms exist. So in any of our regions, while we say we've got this framework and a foundation that we want people to be able to go into any store in the world, to go into any office in the world and have that same Tapestry feeling of being welcomed, of being authentic, of being creative, being accountable. However, we do welcome and want and encourage our local leaders to add the nuances of their local markets. Because if we don't do that, how do we enable those local employees to be their authentic selves? They
And to reach the customer too. I mean, it comes down to the same thing, as opposed to two sides of the same coin there. What are actually your largest international markets, if I can ask, Denise?
say that again, Peter. I didn't catch.
What are in fact your largest international markets?
Well, North America. I'm sitting in it right now. So North America, China is a huge market for us. Clearly, the UK is an incredibly important market. But then we have other markets that are, very close behind those major markets. Our Southeast Asia market is an incredibly growing market with a ton of potential. That's actually one of our markets. It's super interesting, where we have a lot of experimentation, where we do a lot of test and learn. And so there's a lot of things that come out of our market in Southeast Asia that we apply to the rest of the company. So while it's not as big of a market, say, as China, it's a very important market.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And it's interesting, of course, because in those markets, especially, it seems like those are some of the markets where you have the end-to-end presence. Because you mentioned, like production in Vietnam. I suppose there's some market in terms of sales in Vietnam, but maybe you're also present in places like Indonesia or Malaysia, or of course Singapore, which have a larger sort of power purchasing parity, and you would probably see that sort of end-to-end presence there.
You absolutely do. And I literally was there about a month ago, and you see the entire view of everything that happens in our company right there in Singapore, in that Southeast Asia region.
No, it's amazing. I've been there as well. It was really interesting to see how, I saw it in the case of, for example, Facebook, who employed local creative people there to design, certain things for Facebook. At the time, was the company was still called. But at the same time, these young women were also obviously target consumers and target customers and sort of target audience for this company, especially in terms of Instagram. I don't want to diverge too much because we do still have a lot of questions for you, Denise. The last question I'll ask you about the company. Then I will ask you some personal questions. Then we get student questions. You keep on talking about inclusion as being one of the core things for you throughout the company, from your personnel to your customer. And we can totally see why. I think we would all agree with the analysis that you make. But of course, inclusion is also part of a larger set of values, which is known as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and which we've seen matters a lot in at companies like yours, but which we also know has gotten in certain ways almost not incomprehensibly a lot of backlash. um, could you tell us a little bit about how you deal with that as a company? Because you remain very clearly committed to this, and we can see why. But of course, you're not immune to to societal pressures either.
Right. So, and I mean, this is a big question we could probably talk for hours about, right? Particularly in the US right now, but I know that this question exists around the globe very in a big way. So for us, DE&I is really twofold in our company. So first of all, and I've said it a couple of times, as you mentioned, from an individual employee perspective, we truly believe that difference sparks brilliance. It's one of our values. And so to have different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives, we believe that that is the thing that is our competitive advantage, because we have to have an employee base that reflects our consumer base. How else are we going to get it right for our consumers if our employees don't reflect the consumer base? And I have to tell you that, way before there was a lot of discussion about DE&I and how this comes into a company. It was a philosophy that I held very close very early on in my career. And so I have seen how mirroring your organization with your customer base is a strategy that it fuels success.
And we see how with so many other companies, right? Like, and we spoke to a company like IKEA, like them understanding that their core customer was a working mother, for example, led them to make a lot of changes to the way they designed. But of course, that would have been precipitated if they had people in their organization that reflected better their target customer.
That's exactly right. And look, the other thing, and I talk a lot about this in our company, and this is probably part of my personal brand. It's the right human thing to do for our fellow human beings to respect individual differences. And honestly, sometimes in, the corporate world, sometimes things like humanity get overlooked and we don't talk about it that much. I talk about it all the time because our company is made up of human beings with different experiences, different needs, different wants. And we need to respect that. If we want people to come to work to be their best selves and to help them reach their potential, we need to respect that. We need to understand them as human beings. We need to respect it. We need to enable them, and we need to welcome those perspectives. And that's a big component that, um, companies are made up of human beings. And so we encourage and we talk a lot about welcoming different perspectives and soliciting different perspectives. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and I believe in having empathy and demonstrating as a senior executive in our company care um, for all of our employees, and in every interaction trying to be respectful and understanding and being curious so that we really can um, enable people to reach their potential. So I think there is two real important components here. One is there's a business reason to embrace diversity, to embrace inclusion. There's a human element there that, again, I hope everyone on the call sort of takes that comment in. You may or may not experience that when you get into your next role, but always bring that because people.
Because it's always there.
Yeah.
Denise, I guess that's an invitation from you to us to also understand you as a person, as a human being, because now we've spent half an hour talking about the company, and we appreciate all the learnings. But I guess we should get to know you as a person as well. So let me take you back in time to when you were, the age that our students are now, which is to say early 20s. Was it always obvious to you that you were going to be an executive at a large fashion company one day?
No, it was not. And by the way, it was a really long time ago. But no, it was definitely not obvious to me. I actually, so when I did my undergrad, I studied psychology, and then I went to the University of Pennsylvania and I was in a PhD program. I wanted to be a child psychologist.
Which would have been wonderful.
It would have been wonderful, there's no question. But what I realized in about 3 or 4 months, that was not my path. I just knew. So I ended my graduate studies with a master's in counseling, and I had through my high school and college years had always been very involved in the community. So my natural inclination was to become a social worker. So I did that for a couple of years, and what I realized was that in that work, I didn't necessarily have a lot of control over my impact, where I could really make a difference. And I had this crazy idea. I said, I'll go to corporate America and have more control and more impact in the world. And I will still participate in the community, but more on my personal time.
Is that also, you know, is there a part of that where you're sort of like, when you're dealing, of course, with social work, that means a lot of people that have sort of, in one way or another, encountered problems and sort of, challenges in their life. It was part of the reason that you say when you work in the corporate world, as you can actually have an impact on a lot of people. In your case, now 18,000 people, and help that they continue to have that sort of calling in life and lead a good life while they're also contributing value.
Yes, and you know what's interesting, and I actually had just thought about this. I hadn't thought about this before, Peter. You got me to get to this place. But I think my experience in my first role, really seeing that the way that that organization or just social work in general is constructed, it's not necessarily constructed to enable people to be successful. It's not. And again, that's a conversation for a different day. But every role I had when I did get into more of a corporate role, I was always very focused on how do I make an impact? How can I make change? How can I move something forward versus letting it kind of sit? And that I think has been a big difference in my success. And I've done it maybe even a little bit unconsciously, but that was something that it was always really important to me.
And so, one is this realization that you rather work on that side of the equation, where you work with people in their jobs and help them sort of find their calling and etc. The other part, of your job, of course, is that you are working in the fashion industry. I mean, like, this is really almost a constant in your life. At least you're working in a lot of consumer oriented businesses.
Yeah.
How did you end up in fashion, and how did that become a passion?
Mm. So, well, look, one of the things that I've learned in my career is that the more that I put myself in positions to allow opportunity to reveal itself, the better things turned out. So the more that I felt if I tried to control the next roles that I would go into, it didn't work out. But once I realized letting things reveal itself, the right things come. So I ended up I did a short, a stint in HR consulting when I left social work. But the way that I got into that role was I was networking with some of the my university alumni. And I think that was a really important element. So as I say, put yourself in a position to let things reveal themselves. Well, I invested time and energy in going out and meeting people and connecting with people. And I met this person who was a senior executive in this consulting firm, and he decided to take me under his wing. And I, I I mean, the truth is, I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I thought, I have some skills. I have coaching and counseling skills, and how can they apply? And he helped me to see the next phase of how the skills I had could develop and evolve into more of a consulting role. So for me, it was always about allowing things to reveal themselves, but being open to what might come.
It's really interesting for many reasons, but including that, maybe because I'll speak for the students now. We're part of a generation that has done a lot of socializing in sort of the pandemic and online. It's as we are doing now, and while it has value, unique things happen also when you literally, as you say, put yourself into the world and let a little bit more serendipity play a role in
Yes.
these connections. That seems to be something that really resonates with you. You've experienced that a number of times in your career, haven't you? That you sort of putting yourself out there.
I absolutely have. And I will tell you that, you know, can I just be honest, Peter?
Yeah, please.
I do think that in some cases today, across all generations, this isn't necessarily generational, but I do think that investing time in relationships that are not online or in social media, investing time in relationships is really valuable. And I know that oftentimes being online or going through social media is easier. But sometimes putting yourself in a position that might feel a bit uncomfortable, but in actually going out and meeting people, networking and saying, asking to have a cup of coffee, working you all have probably a bigger network than you actually think you do. And going out and talking to people, just talking to them about what are they doing? What has their career been like? Do they have any advice for you? The more that you do that, the more you get connected to new ideas, to new people. And I do believe that w- as a culture, getting back to being more proactive in managing our career and our outcomes versus waiting for something to come to us because we applied for something online, I think is far more effective.
It's really a valuable lesson I find. By the way, also for me, Denise. I mean, like, I think we've all grown accustomed a little bit to that other way of working because at some point we had to. And in fact, this class is an example of that. Now, there's obvious benefits to this, right? Like we have the luck and the chance to talk to you largely because we also have that online offering. And that's a very clear benefit for all of us who are interested in that journey and that path in that career in that industry. But I'll give you the example. 2 weeks ago, we most of the students in the call today were able to attend an in-person learning from leaders as well, and then probably people in the call will agree. Like it is true. Then by being put in a situation where you can actually go to that person, you might actually approach them in a different way, and different conversations might evolve from that. And that's the lesson, as you say, for all of us.
Yeah, it's a both and, right? It's not one or the other. It's a both and it's infusing the more personal um, into the virtual.
Yeah. Well, we look forward one day to welcoming you in Barcelona or Munich, or maybe we should just come to New York and see you there. Is what it
That would
sounds
be
like.
great. That would be I love Barcelona, so I should go there again, actually. I haven't been in a while.
It's great, and I will say, as much as we love Kate Spade and Coach, there's actually some nice brands in Barcelona as well that you might know of. I think one of the largest IPOs in Europe, in fact, this year was from a Spanish-based fashion company.
They're
You might know that. You might know that.
great.
They're good stuff. I'll ask you one more question, then we get to the students because they've been waiting patiently for to ask you a question as well. We now know you as an executive from an iconic fashion company, but you've worked at many other companies as well. I think one that stood out to me was Party City. Party City being basically a store for people who like to party. Yes, and organize birthday celebrations, etc. And we definitely been there for our kids. So, if you look back at your career, tell us a little bit about the kinds of companies that you've worked for and why you felt at the time that was a good idea, or what you enjoyed about the companies you've been at.
Yeah. So, well, a couple of things that are sort of a silver thread that goes through my entire career. One I've already shared, which is I let things reveal themselves, and I generally didn't say no to new opportunities. The other thing that always seemed to happen was just as I was getting kind of comfortable in a role, I went into a new role. And so I was always very willing to be uncomfortable. And sometimes that's really hard, but what I'm confident is that if I wasn't willing to be uncomfortable, the opportunities that revealed themselves, I don't think I ever would have taken. So what's interesting about my career is that it really did build on each role built on the next. Even back from when I was in social work, there were skills and experiences that I had and I got in those in that role that frankly I still use today, right? That level of empathy and understanding. Um, as I think about my career at Gap Inc., I was there for 17 years. And it was really important to me that I had a lot of different experiences there. So I very proactively ended up in every brand at Gap Inc. I ended up in I was in a corporate role. I was in a field like a stores role. I was in one of the first employees in our online business. I led an international HR function. I led an outlet function. So for me, my career was always focused on how do I go into the next role where I can learn something new, number one, where I could get uncomfortable because that's when you grow. The only way you grow is when you're uncomfortable. And then I was also very willing to do things that other people hadn't done before. And that was also a very interesting learning. That's also kind of part of my brand where I'll do things. I was the first one of something in many of my roles at Gap Inc. Then I did something that a lot of people don't do, and I actually took some time off. I'd been traveling a lot, and I decided that I would take time off. It was supposed to be a year. It ended up being a year and a half. I was doing a lot of fun travel, but taking a sabbatical is something I know you're all like thinking about your first career and getting into the work world, for many of you. But taking a sabbatical and stepping away is a really, I think, and in retrospect, important way to keep perspective in your life, in your career. And if you can do it, I do encourage people to think, even if it's short, you don't have to take a year and a half off. But even if it's a short amount of time to step away and get some perspective somewhere in your career, I think is important. And then I went to Estée Lauder, and the reason I went to Estée Lauder was because I was taking all of the experience and the really world-class HR that I learned at Gap Inc., and I brought that to a company that was very branded. We had about 23 brands at Estée Lauder. So that was an experience for me where I then could go in and teach others, and that was super exciting. And I was very happy at Estée Lauder, and I got a call to become the chief HR officer at Party City, and I will tell you the truth. The truth is that I never had a desire to be in the top HR job. I like to be number 2. I like to go under the radar a little bit. But there was something that said to me, "You're comfortable, go get uncomfortable." And I did. And it was the best decision I ever made because I love this role. And I learned and I jumped into a role I had no idea what I was doing, truth. But I figured it out. And I took my experience and I applied it. And then eventually got a call about a role here at Tapestry. And again, things reveal themselves. I was very comfortable at Party City.
I
And
would be too. I'd stay there forever if I could.
it was super fun. I have to say, it was super fun. But I was very comfortable. I helped to really rebuild the company. And I thought, yeah, this now Tapestry, one of our strategies is acquisition. I've done some acquisition work in my career, and so I'm super excited to help to grow the company and to go through some acquisitions in the next few years. But again, it was all about I'm comfortable, now let's get uncomfortable again. And really great things happen when you're willing and courageous to do it.
That's fantastic. I see in the reactions from the people that are attending, and that they're all taking notes. I am too, because what you said. You got to make sure that you're comfortable, because that's where you learn. Or also the advice of taking a sabbatical, which I think for most students comes a little bit early.
It's a little
I think career, but definitely resonates with me. I can see the reactions there. So thank you for that, Denise. Now I do want to get to the questions from the students, because they've been waiting patiently, and I'd love to see if we can turn first to Charlotte. Charlotte is Lithuanian, I think, right? Charlotte, but you are currently studying in Barcelona, and you had one of the questions on sort of equality and inclusion in the company.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I wanted to ask Denise, what kind of strategies does Tapestry implement to promote equality in the workplace, especially when it comes to leadership roles?
So that's a great question, and I'm delighted to say that we actually have a number of strategies to to promote equality, particularly at the executive level. So I'll give you a few different things that we do. First of all, number one, as you can see, even in my comments, we talk about inclusion and equity quite a bit, all in the spirit of humanity as well as driving the business. But we do have a series of workshops that leaders and employees can attend to continue to understand what this really means and what are the behaviors that we expect in the company, um, that we expect people to demonstrate so that we do have an inclusive environment and culture. So that's number one. Number two, we have a recruiting strategy that includes um, a, a whole element of where do we recruit and do we recruit from diverse sources. So that's a really important element, and that's something that you've got to be proactive to do. You've got to have a very clear plan of where you'll recruit and how you'll recruit. In fact, for director and above roles, well, first of all, let me just say, we require that every role that we have open in the company gets posted. So at least for 10 days. And why do we do that? Because if we're thinking about equity and equality, we want everybody in the company to have an opportunity to apply for any particular role. We don't want it to be based only on who you know and did you get a tap on the shoulder. We want people to have the ability to raise their hand to say, I'm interested in that. We want people to have that ability equally. For directors and above, we will not extend an offer to a candidate unless we have demonstrated that we have had a diverse slate of candidates for that particular role. And we're committed to that. And so if that takes longer to get to that diverse slate, to get to the decision, then so be it. So it's on, it's on the hiring manager to ensure there's a diverse slate, and it's the responsibility of my recruiting team to ensure that we have a diverse slate strategy.
Wow, that's fascinating, Denise. And talk about thank you indeed, and talk about uncomfortable, right? Like if you think about how uncomfortable that must make a lot of people throughout these processes, but I guess with the higher good in mind. Um, a lot of our questions are about this. I'll ask Laura now. Perhaps Laura, focusing a little bit more on international part of the job. Laura, who's Portuguese but also stays in Barcelona.
Yeah. Hi, Denise. Thank you for sharing such good insights. Yeah, as Peter said, like as an international business student, I would like to know how does the company adapt his human resources strategies to balance global consistency with local culture and regulatory requirements across different markets.
Yeah. So it's tricky. It's very complex. But I said earlier that we do have this foundation of our company purpose, values, the culture that we are creating. And so that is something that is really a cornerstone across all of our markets. That said, we are very focused on enabling decisions to get made as close to the consumer as possible and as close to the employees as possible. So what does that mean? While we have a philosophy and some high level, let's just take the employee experience, the employee journey from recruiting all the way to onboarding, development, managing performance, and maybe exiting the company. We have a high level approach to that. But to your point, there are a significant number of local regulatory requirements. And so we don't try to control those from the center, from our corporate office. We have created a structure in each of the regions and each of the markets so that where there are local nuances, local requirements, and I'm giving you my function from an HR perspective. I have heads of HR in each of those markets and regions, and they're responsible for ensuring that we've got the right structure, the right capability, and the right knowledge to manage to any of those local nuances, the local regulatory requirements, et cetera. Now, we do have an audit process, and we do have other control mechanisms in place to check. But there's a level of we've got to have the right talent and the right people leading these different parts of the business in each market to understand their markets and be accountable to managing their business and the market and the employee experience well. And that's what we do, because there's no way, and this is something I think that's important. Probably a lot of companies try to manage from the center. There's no way that I, sitting in New York, can manage local regulatory requirements in China. And I have a great leader there, a great head of HR. There's a great head of the region, and we trust that they're going to manage that on behalf of our company.
Yeah, it's that's also uncomfortable, I suppose. Is letting go or sort of trusting your local teams, but it is crucial to success,
Yep.
as we've all, well, not all, but as I'm sure you found out, as you just said. Which brings me to Radostina. Radostina, who's Bulgarian, studying in digital business in Barcelona. Radostina, and I wonder, Radostina, if you also want to bring up, the your backup sort of questions on purpose and autonomy, because I think that's very interesting as well.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Peter. Because I also was impressed that the company has 18,000 of employees. My question is, what role do autonomy and feedback play in driving employee satisfaction and performance within Tapestry global team?
So thank you for that question. And it's actually feedback and autonomy play a critical role. So number one, we continue to work on ensuring that our employees feel like they have the autonomy to make decisions. And it's super important that when you put that in place in a company, and always evolves, right? You never actually achieve it. You just keep trying to get better and better and better in enabling employees to make decisions and be accountable and autonomous for the decisions that they're making. But with that, it's really important to pair a process or opportunity to get feedback and coaching. So we have the good news, at least our employees believe it's good news, and I believe it's good news. We have abolished the annual review. So we no longer do that. The annual review in many companies is a laborious process by which you get feedback once a year, and it's not really meaningful. You spend a lot of time, and people don't particularly love the process. So what we've done,
I want to come work for Tapestry right now.
is it? Oh, it's so right.
I'm ready.
It's amazing. But what we've done is put in these quarterly conversations. We call them quarterly snapshots. And in the quarterly snapshot, every single employee has, and it's a brief conversation, maybe 30 minutes a quarter. And in that 30 minutes, there's a review of or a discussion about how is the person doing as a human being? How are you doing? We want to stop and ask that question. How are you doing on your goals and priorities? Where are you making progress? Where do you have challenges? And as a leader, how can I support or enable the work that you're doing? Where do you need some more partnership? And then as a leader, I can give my employees any feedback that perhaps I hadn't given them through the quarter, but at least it's a touch point. It's one moment every quarter where we can say, let's talk about how things are going. I also encourage my team to give me feedback. Where can I be more supportive? What am I doing that's enabling you? What am I doing that's driving you crazy? So we have a really, I hope I don't do a lot that drives people crazy, but maybe sometimes. Um, but so we have a really open dialogue. So truly, this is the moment that it's for the employee, and we've gotten such positive feedback from the employees and from leaders about this process, because it's a way to ensure that the employee and the leader are on the same page. They understand where the work is, and each of them understands what they need to do to contribute to support the other person. So you can't have autonomy without having some feedback and some support and enablement, and that's how we pair those together.
That sounds great. Where are you next? I'll follow you, Denise. Unless, of course, you want to be inclusive of people like myself in your organization. That there's a place for me there right now. But let's get to our final question. Elisabetta. Elisabetta is also studying in Barcelona, also doing a master in digital business. Hello, how are you? And after for the final question of today, go ahead.
Hello.
So I would like to know more, how does Tapestry leverage technology and analytics to enhance HR processes from recruitment to employee engagement and performance evaluation?
So this is a really interesting and very timely question for us at Tapestry. So one of the things, so we have an HRIS system that we use, of course. There's a couple of components here. One, I first want to talk about data. So your analytics question. We, from an HR perspective, and again, I've been there for a year, and one of my areas of focus has been to build more data analytics capability from a people perspective. So it's something that we hadn't really focused on previously, but now we've actually dedicated some roles in the company to purely looking at data analytics and helping to inform decisions that we are making as an HR organization and as a leadership team. The other thing that we're doing, we're actually now in the process of shifting the HRIS system that we currently have. We're going to a completely new platform, and it's really important because that platform that we're going to is enabled by AI. That platform has much different reporting capabilities, and most importantly, it's really it's much more user friendly. And why is that important? The current technology that we're using, and many of you will go into companies probably where you have really advanced technology and maybe technology that needs to catch up. But the technology that we currently have that we're switching out, we have thousands of employees who work in stores. So we need to make it as easy as possible for an employee in a store, a fulfillment center, or in our corporate offices to go into our people system and do whatever transactions they need to do. They need to be able to report on their teams, etc. Our system today doesn't enable that, but we are putting in a new system. It'll take a bit of time. We're putting in a new system, and we're putting in a whole new communication platform that will better enable our employees to transact, to get data, and to communicate. And those three things are super important because one of our pillars, our people priorities, is to make it easy to be an employee in our company. And today, in all transparency, we haven't made it as easy as we should. So we are moving. So within about 12 or 18 months, we should be in a very, very different place. It's an important question that you've asked because making it easy for people to do their jobs is critical.
Yeah, and Denise, I have to say, we managed to get through 58 minutes of the conversation without mentioning AI. That's got to be a new record in the modern age. Congratulations to you. And somebody beats the record, I'll let you know. But now we're actually at the end of our conversation. Maybe just very quickly, if you had to give one piece of advice to students about, anything really, but to pursue a professional career or including a Tapestry, what would it be?
Be courageous.
That's
Just
fantastic.
be courageous. Trust yourself, trust your capabilities, and be courageous. And by being courageous, good things will come.
That's fantastic. Well, Denise, we're going to try to be courageous, but we absolutely loved this session with you. We all learned a lot. I learned a lot. And I can see from the reactions from the students that they learned a lot. We're definitely big fans now of Tapestry, of all its brands, that's for sure. So that's acquired, but maybe one day we'll also get a chance to work with you. And for now, Denise, we want to thank you. Thank you, especially because it's Monday morning. It's not just a Monday morning like any Monday. It is the Monday morning after Thanksgiving. And you were so nice to spend that time with us. We're very grateful, Denise. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the day and week.
Thank you. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And everyone else, we'll see each other again next semester. This was the final Learning from Leaders for this semester. We hope you enjoyed it, and see you soon. Bye.